This week, hundreds of thousands of songs were removed from Spotify because the users were using fake streams and fake bots to get more plays on their music. There was also a problem because a lot of people are claiming that their organically promoted songs, or legally promoted songs, are also getting taken down. My initial thought here is that people are just using this as another opportunity to continuously bash Spotify because they think they're paying artists too little. Yesterday, I was looking at tons of tweets and reposted stories from different music accounts, different music marketing accounts, talking about how all of these streams were real and that the songs that are being removed were only promoted organically and only had real people listening to them. I took the liberty of looking at a lot of these artists' profiles to see if they were actually promoting their music organically. Turns out, most of them were not. I looked through every single artist's Spotify account who was complaining about this and saw that every single one was using fake streams. For some context, fake streams come from bot farms, which is basically just a bunch of fake accounts who listen to a playlist on repeat to get the people who are on the playlist more streams and therefore more money. Sometimes the artist isn't even aware this is happening. Sometimes it's the promotion company that they hired who are doing this behind their backs and without them even knowing it. The reason this is bad is because of how Spotify pays artists. Spotify takes all of the money from the ad revenue and also from paid subscriptions. And they divvy this out to all of the artists based on how many streams they got. And so if someone is getting fake streams, they're getting money that other artists should be getting. In this video, I'm going to go through the artist profiles that I looked at yesterday and show you how we can tell that these artists are using fake streams to boost their numbers. Okay, so let's do a quick overview of the top things to look for to see if an artist is using fake streams. The first one is location. There's a couple of red flags that we'll go through when we look at these artist profiles who were doing the fake streams, but the big things are if an artist has all of their listeners in big US cities, generally it's fake. It's hard to get streams in big US cities, and you can say, okay, well maybe that artist is from that city, but even then, advertising in the big cities is very expensive, and it's very rare that big US cities are all of an indie artist's top played cities. Monthly listeners to followers. If an artist has 100,000 monthly listeners and 3 followers on their profile, 100% fake bots. Also stream trends. As an artist on Spotify, I can look at the streams that other artists on Spotify get every day for pretty much all of time, and also how many followers they have and how many listeners they have. And so I can see when there are huge spikes in listeners one day where they'll have 5,000 plays and the next day have basically 0 plays. That is a sure sign of a botted playlist. I'm going to use my account as a comparison to show you what real growth on Spotify looks like for most indie artists. Let's start this off by looking at my Spotify data. So this is a graph from 2015. When I first released my song in 2019, got very little plays, and over time started growing through things like Instagram promotion, Facebook ads, all that and the other. And so this is what a typical growth could look like. In the past 28 days, I had a Discover weekly push, which is a little bit of jump in music. That tapered off a little bit and settling around the couple thousand streams per day thing. Listeners looks almost about the same, and my following graph is a nice upward curve. This is where things get a little bit funky. Let's start with David's profile. Elixir dropped, and it had a small percentage of nearly 100,000 streams from paid curated playlists. So first of all, right off the bat, paying for playlist placement is already against Spotify's terms and conditions, so he's not in a good spot so far. So David has 28,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. The majority of his listeners come from Buffalo, United States, and almost every single one of his followers comes from a big US city. These cities are super expensive to advertise to, and it makes no sense as to why such a huge fraction of his listeners come from the same 5 cities. Buffalo, New York, also, there's only 260,000 people in Buffalo, New York, and so the idea that 2,000 of his listeners, almost 3,000 of his listeners, come from that city is pretty crazy, especially when you consider the fact that most botted playlists use bots from Buffalo, New York. So you'll see this trend with a lot of people with fake plays, is one of their top cities is Buffalo, New York. All right, so let's look at his Spotify data. So I showed you my Spotify graph of my followers, and it goes straight up like this. Well, his graph jumps to over 1,000 in one day. This is not what real growth looks like, and that is clear that at that point there was some bot action going on. And so his total streams, you can see when compared to mine, he had an insanely massive spike in streams over a period of a couple of days where he had almost 40,000 streams in single days, and since then hasn't even come close to that. All right, now let's take a look at Larry Hall of Fame's profile on Spotify. He says he lost 12 songs, wasn't doing crazy numbers, but did 0 promo whatsoever. So at first glance, his profile, He has 8,691 monthly listeners and only 36 followers. That's a little bit of a red flag there, but it can't really prove anything. Now, if we look over to the Where People Listen section, we can see that almost half of his entire listener base is coming from one US city, Phoenix, Arizona. This is insane because even if he was from that city, you'd expect a much bigger distribution. So if he was doing a live show every single night, sure, maybe it's possible for one city to have most of his listeners, but that clearly is not the case because cities have been on lockdown. Now let's look over at his streaming graph over the past few years. So as you can see, compared to mine, he has insane spikes where he'll go and get 28,000 streams in one day and then 0 streams the next day. This is clear sign of botting. Again, I don't have to show this one because the last graph pretty much proves it, but their botted followers have huge spikes and then immediately go away, and this has happened twice over the past year. Next on the chopping block, we have Rebel Kicks. So Rebel Kicks says, same thing happened to them. There was the accusation of artificial streaming, even though all promotion was completely legitimate. This needs to be fixed immediately. Let's look at the monthly listeners and followers. This looks pretty normal. So 4,000 monthly listeners, almost 1,000 followers. This is a little bit of a problem again because the top 5 cities are very expensive United States cities to advertise in. So the likelihood of most of their listeners coming from these cities is pretty low. Now, if we go and look at their graph of streams over the past few years, you see more interesting things. So my graph, it's gradual growth over the past year or so, and Rebel Kicks has had insane spikes, just like the other artists. Days where they'll have 3,000 streams a couple days in a row and then go right back down to about 100 for many days. Or even this one where it goes up to 6,000 and then drops right back down to the normal amount. Let's look at John's profile. John made a Christmas album to uplift the community and promoted it organically. The song was removed because he claims people were enjoying it and he couldn't get his royalties because of this. So let's look at his profile. 24,000 monthly listeners. Almost half of his entire listener base is coming from the same top 5 cities in the world: London, Paris, Frankfurt, Milan, and Rome. For an artist this big, it is incredibly rare for that many people to be listening to their music from just those cities. It should be much more spread out than this. And of course, if we look at his Spotify for Artists data, you can see that yes, indeed, bots were involved with his account, bringing his following up to 5,000 followers and then dropping back down a few days later. All right, folks, that is all I have for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Again, I just want to reiterate that the artists that I'm talking about in this video and many of the other artists who are having this problem, it might not really be their fault that their song was taken down. It might be the promotion companies that they unknowingly were using fake bots. It's important to know that most of these promotion companies are using fake strategies to grow people's playlists and to grow people's Spotify accounts, and that's a huge problem. Hopefully this lets artists know that this is serious and that you need to really look into the companies that you're using, and I hope it lets the companies know that it's time for them to start closing up their doors or promoting people's music for real. Thank you so much for watching.